We had a wonderful day yesterday out there in the sunshine. I was hoping for another good one today, but it's kind of the promise that things are coming down the road. So
Thanks for coming
we had
today.
a wonderful day
I
yesterday
wanted-
out there in the
we got
sunshine.
kind of a
I
big
was
meeting
hoping for another
planned, so I
good one
want
today,
to get
but,
into
it's kind of the promise that things are coming
the
down the road.
forms changes.
We
Thanks for
had
coming
a
today
wonderful day
relatively
yesterday out
quickly.
there in the
We got
sunshine.
I don't know if you
Kind
know
of
or
a
not,
big
but the
meeting
West
planned,
Michigan
so I want to get
regional
into,
forums
kind of the
put
promise
together
that
by
things are
7
coming
different
down the road.
associations. Changes.
So
Thanks
we
for
had
coming
a
today
wonderful day
relatively
yesterday
quickly.
out there in the
We got I
sunshine.
don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan regional forums
kind of
put
the
together by
promise that
7
things are
different
coming down the road.
associations. Montcalm changes.
So
Thanks for
we
coming
had a
today
wonderful day
relatively
yesterday
quickly.
out there in the
We got I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan regional forums put together by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. We got I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan regional forums put together by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. We got I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan regional forums put together by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. We got I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan regional forums put together by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. We got I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan regional forums put together by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. We got I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan regional forums put together by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Montcalm changes. Thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Just make sure thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Just make sure thanks for coming today relatively quickly. One thing I don't know if you know or not, but the West Michigan not allowed to have great ideas by 7 different associations. Just make sure Buyer or seller shall, within 10 days of the effective order, of the effective date, order at their expense a boundary survey. So if they've taken out or seller, shall have 10 days for a boundary order, of the effective date, order at their expense a boundary survey. The same time period. So if they've taken out or seller, so within 10 days shall have 10 days for a boundary order, of the effective date, order at their expense a boundary survey. Same time period. Buyer taken out or seller, so within 10 days shall have 10 days for a boundary order, of the effective date, order at their expense a boundary survey. Same time period. Buyer taken out or seller by the buyer. 10 days shall have 10 days for a boundary order. not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire. 10 days, 10 days, not fairly wide open sometimes orders are taken out by the fire.
for the inspections, for paying for whatever. You're welcome to use that. Now, you don't need that whole form anymore. All you really need to say is seller asked seller asked agent to order this and this. And then this clause picks it up after that. Okay, last page. All they've done, go to the next one. So this is your amendment form, and all they've done is they've eliminated the withdrawal form and included it on this one. So the last two check boxes here are change the status to withdrawn as of such and such a date, or change the status from withdrawn back to active. So you use this form rather than a separate form. It just kind of combines the function of the two forms. No big change there. Okay, any quick questions on that? Okay, we got a good meeting coming up. I wanted to let you know that first, if you've got, for any active listing, pick up one of the text DRA signs. Who did I use as guinea pigs on this here? Okay. I put up a couple of these. I did more than that, but I put up a few of these and then I'd call on them. And I just wanted to make sure that it's working, and it works pretty cool. So just know that on any listing, so if you got a call today and on one of your listings, you don't have a sign up and the people say, can you provide information? You can just tell them, all you need to do is text 35620 to Midwest. And it'll still pick it up. They don't have to have a sign writer on it, but it's a good way to deliver information to somebody who's sitting out in front of the house.
As long as they're out front.
They have to be near the house.
Text Midwest to 356.
Did I say it backwards? Okay, yeah. Text Midwest to 35620, yeah.
How does that come out? If it's just the fact that those numbers and then they're close to the house is how it's set up?
Yes. And it'll happen two different ways. One is as the buyer, because I did this as the buyer to you guys. As the buyer, it'll either say, will you allow me to use your location? Even though my location was turned on, it asked me again whether, and I said yes, and then up comes the listing with your name, with your information on it. The other way is it goes straight through. It just shows you the information. I don't know if it's because I did it multiple times or what, but these are gonna make you some money. And just remember, they don't have to have a rider out there. If they're in front of the property, you can say, text Midwest to 35620. So you just got to remember this number, 35620. And they're very helpful. We have where's the second box of these? Okay, I took one box of these and I'm putting them up as I see listings out there that don't have them. But these will be laying back there. If you've got a listing you can use it for, take one. If you've got one coming up, take one. As long as we have these left, we're not charging for them. Once these are gone, then you'll be able to order them at that point.
Are you hanging those?
It depends on the listing. It'll depend on the sign. On yard arm signs, there's generally a groove and then a little holder spot on the end of the groove that it slips into. On the regular yard signs, I'm slipping them in, but just be aware that these are very thin. And the Coroplast or the other stuff that we have is thicker. So these rattle a little bit. I don't know if they'll come out of the signs yet or not. Say that again?
I use zip ties and it reinforces it.
Yeah, if that's a great idea. And they've also got holes in them, and we did get some hardware along with them in the package, so you can take a look at that as you go. Yeah, Melissa.
Could you rephrase that again? You only have a certain number of them, and once they're gone, the agent has to buy them, or does everybody get one, or how is that working?
We have some right now, and they're for listings, people who have listings. So if you have a listing, take one. When you get a listing, take one. Once these are gone, they'll be available to purchase for $3 or $5 or whatever they are. So we wanted to get things started on these, but we don't generally supply signs. No.
So to use until we buy our own, is that what I'm hearing you say?
If you were to take one of these, we'd like you to return it when you're done. We live in a real world. We know that some of that won't happen. So take them and use them. And when they're, use them for listings that you have. That's all we're going to say. We're not too worried about that. Last thing is that if God willing and the creek don't rise, we got signs coming in today. our yard signs coming in today, the new yard signs. So we'll let you know when we get those in. We're going to organize them before we start dispersing them, because there's going to be quite a few of them. So we'll have them laid out, and we'll let you know, and we'll have a sign pickup party, or we'll do something with that.
Okay.
Janine, turn it over to you.
Adrian? Adrian's gonna talk about how to come in strong for highest and best competing offers.
Strong. All right, so I just want to tell you guys about a client that we're working on right now. We got this client referred to us last summer and pre-qualified him at his income level. He qualifies for about $160,000. You guys might be aware of this, but $160,000 is a pretty competitive price point to be in. Yeah, that's a tough price point. So he qualifies at $160,000. He'd been saving his money, and his parents were going to give him a little bit of a gift. So he qualified. He had decent credit. He's a young kid, first home, not a whole lot of credit, a little bit thin. 720 credit score, which is pretty good. But he qualified for a 3% down conventional loan. But we're going to need the seller to pay for closing costs. So we need the seller to pay for 3% closing costs at $160,000. So what that means is he discovered pretty quickly that this is a competitive market, and over the past few months, he's been making offers and not winning, and they, they're trying escalation clauses, and they're trying different ways to get their offer accepted. So he kind of gave up for a little bit, and then came back. He found a house. I got a call from the realtor, and he said, "Hey, I need an updated approval letter. This one's expired. Take a look at this file." I said, "Look, let's regroup. We want to look at this, get on the same page, and try to get his offer accepted." Because he found a house, he wanted it, and the listing agent, before they even put in an offer, the verbiage are three favorite words: highest and best. Highest and best, because we're going to be holding offers. We're going to present offers on this day at this time. And sure enough, this house was listed at $135,000, and there were 17 offers.
Oh, that's underpriced.
So how do we get ours accepted? So what I did was I coordinated with the buyer's agent. We came together, and I said, "Look, we need to regroup, because it doesn't matter how much you inflate this price to get the closing costs covered. We're still asking, hello? We're still asking the seller to kick in for the closing costs, and it's just going to put us at a disadvantage. So if we're asking for that, we got to figure out a different way around this." So what we did was I said, "Look, I got a new product that I didn't have last summer when we initially pre-qualified him. We have a new zero down conventional loan." Now, up to this point, this young guy had been saving his money. He got a little bit of a tax refund. He had $6,000, which is still just over 3% of that price point at $160,000. So we did 4 things to help him get his offer accepted. We did end up getting his offer accepted. His deal's in process right now, and we're confident it's going to close. We did 4 things. The first thing is we changed his loan product from this 3% down conventional loan with seller concessions, which, by the way, he was going to be getting a phenomenal interest rate, something on a 30-year fix, like in the mid-low 3s, like cheap, stupid, cheap money. But we changed it, and we said, "Hey, look, let's shift gears. Let's do this zero down loan, no PMI." Guess what? The rate's at 5. It's a little bit higher than what we were talking about over here. But because it's zero down, I don't need to ask the seller for any concessions. You've got your own money. You got $6,000. You can pay your own closing costs. Gives you a little bit of breathing room. And earlier you said that your parents were going to kick in for a little bit of extra. Let's firm up that number. How much is a little bit? What can we get from parents? Parents, we get them on the horn. They'll give us $5,000. Okay. So 2 things. Number 1, we take the seller concessions off the table. Number 2, well, now I got $5,000 that we can make up an appraisal gap. Okay. So now our offer's starting to look a little cleaner. Number 3, this gentleman worked in the trades. His family worked in the trades. So when they went to look at this property, they did their own home inspection on site at the viewing, which means they can make their offer without any they waived inspections. I'm not saying that that's a great thing to do for everybody. However, if you have the ability to have the inspection done before you get the offer accepted, okay, now he had that ability. His family was in the trades, so that worked out for him. Something to consider. And so we started looking at these things. Now, the 4th thing, I said, "Hey, look, everything at this point is a pre-qualification. You told me how much you make. I believe you. You told me how much money you have. I believe you. But I haven't seen your documents. I haven't seen your W-2s, your pay stubs, your bank statements. I need all that stuff. And then I can take your letter from pre-qualified to pre-approved. We need every little bit to get this offer accepted. We want this letter to say, I've seen your stuff. You're solid. You're approved." He sends me all of his stuff. I open up his bank statements and I see $350 in his. I go, you said 6,000. Where the money at? So he's like, oh, it's in my girlfriend's mom's account. I keep it there for safekeeping. All right. So we go back to the drawing. Now this is why we press people for documents up front, because they don't tell us things because they don't know they matter. It matters. So we go back to the drawing board. I rerun his approval because I need to make sure that gift funds are okay. Because now it's a gift. It's my money. No, it's in her account. It's a gift, right? And not only is it a gift, but it's a gift from his girlfriend's mother, who's not really an eligible gift source. So I have to route the money from her to the daughter, who now I can route back to him. And there's a paper trail. Don't go moving money around without talking to me. So this is how we get this worked out. But I figure out, okay, I have to go back and rerun his approval and make sure that gift is okay, because the automated system doesn't always like a gift. If it's your own money, it's less risk. If it's gift money, maybe you don't have any skin in the game, and the system doesn't like it. It was fine, turned out good. However, the fact that we went down that path, and I got gift donors' bank statements, we did all of that, we can confidently say you're pre-approved. There's no problem with your deal. So, did I tell you guys what the accepted offer was? Any guesses? List price was $135.
Oh, we did 145.
157 with a $5,000 appraisal gap, waived inspections. So my point to all of that was that initially he came in very much focused on I want the lowest payment, lowest rate, what's the best deal I can get. That was our conversation on day one. After losing offer, it was how do I get my offer accepted, right? The difference between the loan that we built him and the way he got his offer accepted and the other loan was about $35 a month. He traded $35 a month to get his offer accepted. Pretty good trade. So the terms of the financing were less important than actually getting the deal accepted. And so that's how we put that deal together to get that work. My point to this whole story is that in this environment, especially in a competitive price point, it's important that you work hand in hand with your lending partner, whether it's me or somebody else, because together you guys have to be a team to get an offer accepted. Because right now, coming in with an FHA offer and 6% seller concessions was a tough go, right? and we do get those clients where that's the only way it could possibly go because they're rocky. But right now that's the conversation we're having with everybody is this is not a normal market. We have to find a way to make your offer stand out, and these are the things that we did for this client. So that's it for me. Thanks, guys. Questions?
Yeah, what did it appraise for?
Not yet. I don't know. I'm on a couple days.
So you don't know if you've had to use that 5,000 yet?
I don't know if we have to use it yet, but if we do, it's there, right? So we've got it all covered,
What
and
if
even
it's more than 5,000?
well, and if it comes in 7,000 light, well, I've got 5, and they only have to come down 2. So all of that, highest and best. The best in this case is what the listing agent and the seller believes actually going to close, and that's how we came together.
And I'm gonna vouch for Adrian. I had a pre-approved buyer with limited conversations with the lender. And Adrian, I about fell off my chair when I got his pre-approval letter for a specific house outlining all of these details. And we didn't win that house, but I know damn well that got me halfway
Yeah.
there. So
Thanks, guys.
it's amazing, the difference, the confidence you feel as an agent, because sometimes do they need that whole 6%? Do they need 3,000 or 2,400? Questions were answered, it was amazing.
And Adrian's card is in this office. This is officially his office, so just so you know. Okay, so right now we have, everybody's worried about the coronavirus. So we have Brian with the Kent County Health Department, and he's going to talk to us.
All right. Morning, everyone. It's been interesting getting a crash course in realty this morning. It's been a while since I bought a house, but it's interesting to hear more about the process. Let's log in here. I know that a first-time home buyer, that process is scary, right? I don't know much about it, and obviously we're in a scary time here with the coronavirus. And so what I want to do is just kind of give you an overview today about what it is, kind of the myths out there. You see a lot on the news, obviously. You see all these images coming out of China and other parts of the world, and it can really freak you out, right? Thinking about you seeing these, cities shutting down, all these people in these big Tyvek suits walking around, transporting patients and things like that. The images don't help the reality of what we're dealing with. So I want to talk just a little bit about it today. Get your questions. I know you probably have lots of questions about this, so we'll kind of work through that and getting the information out there. So this is just what I want to talk about today. Coronavirus, the history of them, kind of what's going on with coronavirus disease 2019, and then some steps about prevention and planning. What you can do in the business, what you can do at home, simple steps you can take right now to plan if and when. I think it's not a question of if, it's a question of when this comes into our community. We've already seen it in the United States in I think 12 states or 13 states. These types of viruses, it's not like Ebola. Ebola was a virus that didn't transmit that easily unless you had a really close contact with a patient with this. Respiratory infections like these, they transmit pretty easily. We saw it with 2009 with the H1N1 influenza virus. You just kind of can hope to contain it. You can't stop it. You can kind of just hope to contain it. So just some simple things to take precautions of as we prepare. So coronavirus, you've seen a lot of beer things with the Corona beer, like, going downhill because everyone thinks Corona beer causes you to get coronavirus, but it doesn't. Corona is a Spanish word for crown. So that's why the viruses have little spikes on the surface of the virus that look like crowns, and that's where the name came from. So coronavirus, and it's not something that's new. These things have been around since the 60s. They were first identified in the 60s. There's several coronaviruses that infect humans. There's alpha, beta, gamma, delta coronaviruses. There's 4 very common coronaviruses that impact humans on an annual basis, and these are the fancy technical numbers and names for them. But there are lots of them that circulate among animal populations, and that's really the problem. And when we see these new novel cases of coronavirus, they come from the animals. So there's interactions between humans and animals. There's mixing between the viruses, and they take on human components and are able to spread person to person, and that's when we really get into the problem. So we're going to see a lot about that as we talk about some of the historical outbreaks that we've had of severe coronavirus infections. So there's actually 7 total coronaviruses that infect humans. You see 3 here that cause very mild symptoms, and then we'll talk about the 3 other ones that cause more severe illness. So symptoms, this is respiratory season. We're in flu season. People have these symptoms all the time. From April or from October to April, you're coughing, you're sneezing, you've got headaches, you've got fevers and things like that. So not atypical symptoms for coronavirus infection. So you can see all this, things up here. So generally, coronaviruses are very mild, and you probably don't even ever know that you have it or your kid has it, because it's not going to make you sick enough to go to the doctor, not going to make you sick enough to go to the hospital to get a test and see that it's done. There are tests that are done, at Spectrum Health or Mercy Health. If the patient's hospitalized and they do a respiratory panel, there may be coronaviruses coming up, and we've had lots of rumors going around. Someone in Spectrum Health Hospital has coronavirus. They probably do, but it's not novel coronavirus. It's one of these that got picked up on there. But generally, you're not going to be hospitalized for coronavirus infection. There are certain people who are at higher risk and maybe more serious illness will manifest in those individuals. People with heart disease or lung disease, weakened immune systems, cancer patients, people who are on immunosuppressive therapies and things like that, young kids and older adults. That's typically what we see. Any type of infection we talk about, young kids and old adults are most at risk for any type of infection or going to a more serious infection just because their immune systems are more compromised. How is it transmitted? So respiratory infections, we talked about this. It's through the air, coughing, sneezing, things like that. Within 6 feet, that's typically what we talk about in terms of how far these droplets that come out of someone's mouth can transfer, and then the other person can either have them land on their eyes or on their nose or their mouth or hands, and then they touch their face or things like that. So it's really close personal contact, touching, shaking hands and things like that, and then obviously eating or touching your face and your nose. And then also, I know, was it Tom was up here? Is that his name? Okay, so they say Tom's got, coronavirus or influenza or something like that. So now I'm touching the podium up here, and then I go ahead and touch my eye or scratch my nose or pick my nose or something like that. That's how Tom's virus is going to get to me if he's not feeling well. So that's one thing we always talk about, hand washing, all the time. Not just for coronavirus or influenza or norovirus or gastrointestinal disease. I wash my hands like crazy. It's ridiculous. And so I'm not a very type A person, but I am type A with my hand washing because I know how easy it is for these types of infections to get into my body. So seasonality, we always talk about when these things happen. So coronaviruses are most common in the fall and winter times, but they can happen throughout the year. So we see spikes, in this time of year, especially when people are in school. Bless you. Good job covering your cough. That's fantastic. That's like a model citizen, right? Yeah. So.
How effective is the alcohol-based hand?
Yeah, that's perfect. A good question. We'll talk about that. It's great if you use a proper, 60% or more alcohol-based hand sanitizer, and you have to use it properly. You have to read the instructions and say, how long does this have to be on my hands in order to do that? And then you don't want to just rub it, on the palms of your hands. You want to just like we always talk about washing your hands. You talk all surfaces of your hands for 20 seconds, and then letting that dry. If you kind of leave it wet and then you touch something or touch your face when it's still wet, then it's not going to be as effective. So you want to make sure you're using that properly. Yes.
How long does the virus live on the podium there if Tom?
Yeah. Yeah, so we don't yet know all about that. We know it's a newer virus, so we're looking at, continually getting more information about that. We do know an influenza virus can last for up to 24 hours on a surface. We're thinking that these, can generally live, for a while, up to 3 to 4 hours on a surface. It really depends on humidity, temperature, and other things like that. So it's really challenging to give a good answer on that, but just know that hand washing is going to take care of that. So you may remember back in 2003, this was actually when I first joined public health. This was my first interview was during SARS of 2003. So this stands for severe acute respiratory syndrome, and it's another coronavirus that occurred. It first was identified in Asia in 2003. It caused a lot of scare and panic, again, just like this one. But this one was limited to 29 countries. There were about 8,000 cases. There were just only 8 cases in the U.S. The biggest cluster that we had in North America was in Toronto, if you remember that. There was a lot of cases in Toronto up in Canada. And so it wasn't quite as widespread as we see with the coronavirus, but it did cause more deaths. You can see if there are 813 deaths were caused by SARS-CoV, which is about a 10% death rate there. We're not seeing that quite at that high of a death rate with coronavirus. But the thing about SARS is that once the transmission was contained in July of that year, it was very fast. It came and then it's gone. We have not seen any more cases of SARS coronavirus after that short period of time. So it's really interesting to see how these things happen. And we kind of will wonder, what happens with coronavirus? Will it, or COVID-19, will it stay around? Will it kind of start to embed in the community like we see and just get transmitted, more and more every year? Or will it go away like SARS did? So really, really interesting case study there with SARS. We talked about transmission from animals to humans, and so in this one, it was these little cute cats called civet cats. And so in China or in Asia, they have all these live animal markets, and so these are kind of a delicacy in what? in China. They also make some kind of coffee out of civet cat, I think. It's like civet cat poop or something like that. So they're very common in the market. So that's where they traced it back to, was these civet cats, but they actually traced it back to bats. So bats transmitted the virus to civet cats, and civet cats transmitted it to humans. MERS-CoV is Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, another one that occurred. This was in Saudi Arabia. Actually, I think it was 2013. That's a mistake on my part. It's 2013, so this is more recent. And so the Arabian Peninsula is there. All the cases occurred based upon travel or residence in the Arabian Peninsula, all those countries around that area. So there were cases around the world, but they all related back to either living in or travel to that area. And here you can see the same thing, not as contagious as coronavirus 2019. Only 2,500 cases, but 858 deaths, which is about 30 to 40% of individuals with MERS-CoV die from that. And so we're seeing like these old ones, and I think that's what people get very concerned about is these cases that we've seen high mortality rates with those. Coronavirus 2019 is not quite as high as that. So there's that, and then this one was dromedary camels. So this was the route of transmission. We call it zoonotic transmission, so from an animal to a human. And so this happened in the Arabian Peninsula, and so it was in contact with dromedary camels that introduced that virus into humans. So what we're seeing now, we call it COVID-19, coronavirus disease 19. That's not what the actual virus is called. They actually call the virus SARS-CoV-2. So it's like the second coming of SARS coronavirus from 2003. It's a beta coronavirus, and so it's very similar to the SARS virus that we saw in 2003, and this was the one that originated in bats. So we see bats. Bats are very good creatures. They can rid the community of insects and things like that, but they also harbor some of these viruses. So you know about Wuhan, China. That was where this originated right at the end of 2019. Where they had a large outbreak of pneumonia in an animal market or seafood and animal market in Wuhan, China. And again, we're seeing that animal to human transmission like we did with SARS and MERS. The symptoms aren't very different. It's a dry cough, a fever, a shortness of breath, having trouble breathing. What happens with a lot of these more severe cases of COVID-19, so you kind of get these symptoms right away, and then like 7 to 10 days later, it progresses into more serious like pneumonia type symptoms. So some people think it's okay mild at the beginning, but people who have immune systems that are troubled, those infections can progress to more serious infection about a week later. It doesn't transmit any differently than coronaviruses. This is just some more information about it. So I just want to make sure that you know that it's just the same as regular coronaviruses or influenza. It's person-to-person spread. Being in close contact with someone who's sick, those respiratory droplets when someone sneezes, coughs, or something like that, or doesn't cover their cough like you just did there. Hand washing, again, another big thing. Hand washing is huge for this as well. Inanimate surfaces, you asked the question. We're still, like I said, we're still trying to figure that out, how long it can be transmitted from a contaminated surface to an individual. We just know that the main route of transmission is through person-to-person spread. So it may be, some of this with inanimate objects may lend some cases to the overall outbreak, but that's not the main way it gets transmitted. There's also this talk about, asymptomatic transmission. You probably hear a lot about that. So influenza can be transmitted like up to a day prior to the onset of symptoms. So if I'm talking to you right now and I'm feeling fine, and tomorrow I come down with influenza, I can actually spread influenza today to you without even knowing it. And so there's some concern about that with coronavirus. And again, we're still trying to figure that out. But we know that it's not the main route that it gets transmitted. Most people are most highly contagious when they have a fever, when they have symptoms. So that's the most highly likely way that someone's going to transmit it. But there is some concern over this asymptomatic transmission. So this is the worldwide data. So as you see every day, they talk about this on the news, how many cases there are. So I think we just cracked the 90,000 case mark. And so I put this together last night, and already it's out of date. So that's the thing that's going on with this coronavirus. It's emerging and evolving so rapidly that we just can't keep up to date with the data. So you can see over 8,000 or 80,000 cases, are still in China, but it's still kind of going across the globe. And it's not defined as a pandemic yet. So a pandemic is an outbreak that occurs all over the world. So up till now, the World Health Organization hasn't defined this as a pandemic yet, but it's only a matter of time before they do that. So you can see some other areas. Korea and Japan and Italy are some of the areas that have the highest number of cases to date. South Korea. And then you see these international conveyances. So these are like the cruise ship, the Diamond Princess cruise ship that you saw in the news in Japan, where those people were isolated and quarantined on that cruise ship. There were 700 cases of that coronavirus on that ship. And so you see these other numbers across the country or across the world that likely only increase as time goes on. This is what we call an epicurve. This is all the cases outside of China, and so you can kind of see it's only been a couple weeks from like the 20th of February to yesterday, where we've seen a rapid increase in the number of cases. And you can kind of see this orangish line. That's Western Pacific. So you can kind of see it spike and then like come back down. So we're also seeing some, some evidence of a decline in the number of cases in China as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this kind of progresses. Are we seeing kind of a rapid increase and then a rapid fall off of these cases, or is it going to be sustained transmission throughout the year? So there was a large study done in China. About 77,000 patients were involved in this study. So they analyzed the severity of their diseases and also the mortality by age group. And so about 80% of cases are mild, like we talked about before. The majority of coronavirus infections are mild. So we see that in the 77,000 cases in China. 14% were severe and 5% were critical, moving to that very, very critical situation where people then die. Mortality, about 2.3%. So we can always say, how does this compare to the flu? So 2.3% mortality. The flu is about 0.05 to 0.1% mortality every single year. The issue with that is that these are based upon confirmed cases of coronavirus. With influenza, again, not everyone goes to the doctor. Not everyone gets tested with influenza. CDC estimates, about 1 million people or so, become infected with influenza each year. About 16,000 to 40,000 people die. So this is based upon estimates of influenza disease, whereas this is all confirmed cases. And so I think as the the coronavirus outbreak goes on, and we know of mild cases or estimate the number of mild cases that are in the population that never go see a doctor, never go see a healthcare provider or the hospital and get diagnosed, that mortality rate will eventually fall off. If 80% of cases are mild, that means there's a lot of people who probably never saw a doctor and got diagnosed. And so I think it's a little bit inflated at this point. The mortality rate, this was from the study as well, by age group. You can see there 10 to 19 is on the left, 80 plus on the right-hand side. You can see the increase in the mortality rate as age goes on. So, really if you're in a 10 to 50-year age group, it's less than 1%, mortality rate, which is still relatively high compared to flu, but not as high as sometimes it comes out in the news. The biggest risk group is those who are critically ill, and we saw this in Washington State, where we saw the outbreak in that long-term care facility, and we saw 4 deaths occur in that long-term care facility. So those individuals who are very critically ill have really very respiratory issues, heart issues. Those are the people who are going to be most impacted by this outbreak. Just a little bit about what we do in public health. We're monitoring patients. So since February 3rd, not monitoring patients, we're monitoring travelers. So February 3rd, CDC put into effect a traveler monitoring program. So all individuals that came out of Wuhan, China, or Hubei province, where Wuhan is located, they were either isolated if they had symptoms, or they were quarantined if they were asymptomatic. So they would fly into one of 11 airports throughout the country, and if they had traveled to Wuhan, China, or Hubei province, they would automatically be transported to a local hospital where they would stay there for 14 days. So that was one of our initial control measures. Locally in Kent County and across the state, we have medium risk travelers. So those are individuals who traveled to mainland China and returned back, and then they are able to go to their final destination. So they weren't in the main epicenter of the outbreak. They were just in mainland China. So they got to come home, and then we would contact them, and we would ask them to do a home quarantine for 14 days, and then with public health monitoring. So we contact these individuals on a daily basis, just check in on their physical health, ask them if they have any symptoms, and we ask them to take a temperature check every single day, and then we track that and enter it into a statewide database where we can track that, just to make sure that they're, if they come up with symptoms, they're not out and about at work, at school, and things like that. So, so far so good. We haven't had any patients develop symptoms, or travelers develop symptoms. And then people always ask about getting tested for coronavirus. Everyone's curious about it. They have a respiratory infection. They say, I think I've got coronavirus. I think, or my neighbor's been to China, or I went to a Chinese restaurant. So we get calls all the time about this kind of stuff, people worried about having coronavirus. And we have to kind of abide by the CDC's rules for testing for coronavirus. And these are the ones, if you meet any of these criteria, you are able to be tested for coronavirus, which one is just, contact, fever and symptoms, and having contact with a laboratory confirmed case of coronavirus. So maybe you're a healthcare worker in China, and you came back to the United States, you're going to get tested for coronavirus if you were in contact with someone with a confirmed case. This is the one we get a lot of questions about, is fever and signs and symptoms of lower respiratory infection, requiring hospitalization. So you have to be sick enough to be hospitalized. You can't just have a minor cold and have a fever and lower respiratory infection. You have to be sick enough to go to the hospital and travel to one of those affected countries. And the affected countries are listed at the bottom here: China, Iran, Italy, South Korea, and Japan. So that's the only 5 countries right now where you've had a history of travel there. You have to be hospitalized with respiratory infection. You can be tested for coronavirus. Then the last one is just they switched it to this last week after the cases that were in California, where there was no travel history in these individuals. They were in the hospital for a long period of time. There were no other explanatory results that showed different viruses like influenza virus or human viruses. It was kind of an unknown source of infection. So they changed these to allow for testing of those patients who have severe respiratory infection, are hospitalized, and there's no other explanatory reason for them to be that sick. And so that's kind of how that case in California came out. So now we can do this, but again, you have to be very, very sick to be considered for that. We've had several calls about this after the CDC came out with this, and just patients showing up to the ED and having like 102 fever and negative flu test. Can we test them for coronavirus? Right now, we cannot do that just based upon the CDC criteria. So in the United States, this is kind of like, again, this was from yesterday, and this is already out of date. I just want to show you that there's confirmed cases, presumptive positive cases, and then total and confirmed and presumptive positive. Those presumptive positive are those that have been tested by state laboratories. So just in the past week, the state laboratories have gotten the testing kits to be able to test for coronavirus. Prior to that, all the testing was done at the CDC. So I think most of these will still be confirmed at the CDC lab. In Michigan, we just got our kits on last Friday. So as of last Friday, we can test at the state laboratory in Lansing. However, they're very selective on who they will test. Again, they have to meet those PUI, person under investigation criteria, that I showed on the previous slide. We also have repatriated individuals. So these are individuals who were on that Diamond cruise ship from Japan, or people who were in kind of quarantined or isolated in Wuhan, China, and then they were actually brought back to the United States. And these are the ones that you saw who went to the military bases and things like that, where they really had a lot of containment measures involved with those individuals. So we have 48 individuals who were repatriated back to the U.S. and then eventually were diagnosed with coronavirus. And so we're up, I think, this morning it was 1 or 2 cases, 6 deaths, and all of those deaths were in the state of Washington. So the 2 cases that were hospitalized and the 4 that were in that long-term care facility. And then you can kind of see this, I think just yesterday, Georgia, had a case. And so this map will start to fill up with a lot more states that will be colored in. So some prevention and planning, this is the basic measures. We talk about this all the time. Avoid people who are sick. So, you see someone who's coughing and sneezing, just don't go by them. Just stay away from them. 6 feet, or more. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. That's the one thing that we always stress. Hand washing, and don't touch your face if you can. But I think the statistics are like you touch your face like 16 times an hour or something like that, something ridiculous. So I always try to make sure I don't. Just general cleaning. This doesn't need any major, agents to clean, special agents to clean. Just general cleaning of high-touch surfaces, keyboards, door handles, things like that. Face masks. We get a lot of questions about face masks, and people you see on the news like going to Walgreens and Home Depot and all these places to get these face masks. Face masks don't really work to protect yourself from someone else who is sick. The face masks are for people who are sick already and want to contain those respiratory droplets and not get someone else sick. And so I see you've got some over here, those viral face masks. So if you're sick enough to need a face mask, you probably shouldn't be where you're at. You shouldn't be at school, you shouldn't be at work, so you should be home if you need a face mask. If you are wanting to protect yourself against getting sick from someone else, you need an N95 respirator, they're called. So it's a special kind of face mask that requires you to be fit tested. So you have to be fit tested. You have to go into this like little cylinder thing and like make sure you can not smell or inhale whatever's being. They squirt this little thing that stinks, and then it makes sure you have a nice tight seal around your mouth. So face mask basically will give you a false sense of security. They'll make you touch your face a lot. If you've ever worn a face mask, they itch. They feel terrible. So you're gonna just touch your face all the time, trying to adjust it and get that. And that's what we don't want you to do is touch your face, right? So don't get a face mask, and just wash your hands. Like that's the most. If I had a nickel for every time I said wash your hands in my 18-year career in public health, I could go to Adrian and buy a huge house somewhere in Kent County, because it's just what you need to do. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. We talk about non-pharmaceutical interventions. So these are NPIs. These are things that we can do to protect people's health without providing them with antibiotics, without providing them with antivirals or vaccines. Because right now, with coronavirus, we don't have any vaccine. Obviously, it's a new virus, no vaccine. We don't have any antiviral medications that really work against it. We have supportive therapies to bring down fevers and things like that, but like the flu has Tamiflu and all those things that you can take to reduce the viral load in your body. There's not those yet for coronavirus. So we talked about personal, that's basically washing your hands, not touching your face. Environmental is all the cleaning pieces. But in public health, what we could do, as you've seen in other states, other countries, is they shut things down. So it's called social distancing. So they try to keep people away from each other. So you've seen soccer games in Italy with nobody in the stands, right? You've seen schools shut down. You've seen work sites shut down. And it's been extreme in China where they've shut entire cities down and things like that. But these are things that can be put into place to try to keep people away from each other. So these are some things to keep in mind as you prepare your family, as you prepare your business, that there could be times when your school is shut down, so you have to take care of your kids, or you have to stay home from work because you have to take care of your kids and things like that. We're still trying to figure that out, how we're going to work that here locally, kind of figure out how much social disruption is needed for this type of prevention and control of this virus. But just know that this could happen, and you've seen it already happen in Washington. There's been schools shut down in Washington already. Yeah.
So speaking of like the cleaning and the environment, does like the disinfectant sprays work for that?
Yeah. Yes.
Large surfaces?
So there's really no certain viruses like norovirus, which causes gastrointestinal disease, needs a bleach-based solution to clean it and kill it. With coronaviruses, it's just a regular Lysol spray or Clorox wipes and things like that. You don't need a special type of cleaning agent for this type of virus, so that's fine. Business, just think about this, you have a business here. You talk about this all the time. Just stay home when you're sick. Don't try to go show. You may want to make money. Obviously, I know that. But if you have a fever, you're not feeling well, just don't come to work. You're putting your clients and your coworkers at risk. I don't know how much you travel, with the job out of the country, or even with spring break. You got spring break coming up. Just pay attention to those travel warnings. CDC puts travel warnings up on their website all the time. Level 2, level 3 travel warnings. Just if there's a level 3 travel warning, just don't go to that place because you don't want to expose yourself. Just start to prepare. Tom, you're back there. I think you're the guy in charge, maybe. I think. Okay, and Ginny. So just start to think about that. How are we going to continue our operations here? If and when this comes and people are going to be out sick or they're got to stay home with their kids and things like that. So think about your essential functions, any ways that you can change your practice to maintain those critical operations. Do you still need to do stuff? Can you take a break, for a week or two, and showing houses and listing houses and things like that. So just think about a plan, to maintain those essential functions. CDC has a complete document on things to think about. I just kind of put the main points up here. Yeah, Tom?
What would be a guesstimate estimate on recovery time from onset to non-communicability?
Yeah, it's typically, we're talking about 14 days, I think, when someone is, usually the incubation period is about 2 to 14 days. That's the time when you're exposed to the time you get sick. And then symptoms, I think, typically last about 7 days. And then we always recommend people stay out of work or school until at least 24 hours after their fever has stopped. In these situations, we might be more careful and like extend that beyond that. So I'm thinking like a 2-week period total.
Are antibiotics a source of control?
No. Mm-mm. It can be for any subsequent infections that you might have. Sometimes people get sick with a viral infection, then get a bacterial infection. But this is a viral infection, so antibiotics are not going to help at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to Vegas next week, so advice to travelers.
I would say if you're in domestic travel into the United States, don't worry about it. You know.
They did a thing on the news like yesterday or the day before where like now the airplane, like the airlines are mandatory like disinfecting between flights where they used to just do it like after the day. Now between flights they're disinfecting everything, like seats, trays, but they did say bring your own wipes with you and wipe it down before you sit down.
Matt, I
Yeah.
just got back. These are, you can wipe down the seat and the window and
And the headrest.
Yeah.
headrest.
Take a
Take a lot of this.
Yeah, take a bottle of hand sanitizer with you. Use it a lot. Just don't touch your face, you know. So
no towels.
yeah. And then just other things to think about as a business, flexible work sites. Oops, sorry. Go wait for a second. So if you can do flexible work sites, if you can telecommute and that type of stuff, if you can meet with a client on FaceTime or something like that, think about that as opposed to meeting face to face, because there may be times when we take, I don't know what it's going to be like, but where we take extreme measures to try to control the spread of infection. Do you have to work? Answer that question. And if you do have to work, how can you just protect yourself from being exposed to people and maintaining that safe distance from individuals? So, my question.
Can we possibly be overreacting a little bit here in Michigan if we've never had a case?
Are we overreacting in Michigan? I would say, I don't want to.
Yeah, that's a tricky question.
Yeah, I think we are not.
Some of you are.
I think overall, this has been portrayed in the media as something I think that's probably worse than it is. We want to be prepared and be aware of what's going on. And obviously, there's people who are, as I mentioned before, people who are critically ill, people who are in long-term care facilities, really, very old individuals who have other underlying health conditions. They're at risk, obviously, and it's hard to, say that's not a high-risk thing when you see, almost a 50% mortality rate in people who are critically ill. But the general population, I would say, we saw 80% of mild cases. Most populations younger than 70 years of age, get mild infections and not a high mortality rate. And that mortality rate, like I said, likely will come down as we learn more about the virus and know there's cases out there that aren't diagnosed. But anytime there's something new, it's scary. Anytime there's something new, we don't know exactly how it's going to behave, and so I think we want to just get ourselves ready, for that without being completely freaked out about it. I think there's way too much fear right now about it. I think sometimes public health response doesn't help, when we're shutting down schools. Like right now, if we shut down a school in Kent County, we'd have to shut it down for a month or 2 months in order to protect everyone, because this virus, once it takes hold in the community, it's going to spread for a few months, So we're, like I said, answer to that question, like how much social disruption is worth it? We don't know. Yeah, Adrian?
So you mentioned that there was a relative there of SARS, and then there's been some talk about development of a vaccine. I'm just curious, was there ever a vaccine developed for SARS? Like, how was that handled?
No, I think the fact of the matter with SARS, like I said, it came in February 2003, and it was gone by July of 2003, so there wasn't really enough time to talk about that, With the way that, so basically it's SARS and MERS were less contagious but more deadly. What we see with COVID-19 is that it's more contagious and less deadly, and hopefully likely to become more and more less deadly. But when you see something that's highly transmissible like that, that's when you have a vaccine for it. So influenza is highly transmissible, measles is highly transmissible, chickenpox, those types of things that are infect a lot of people. We call it R naught. You'll probably hear a lot about R naught, and that's how many people someone who is sick can infect, when they're in contact with them. So if you can, like measles is like 14 to 18 people. So if I have measles, everyone in this room, if you're not vaccinated, is going to get measles, just by me standing here. With influenza, it's like an RNet of 1.2. So like I can infect like an average of 1.2 other people who I come into contact with. COVID-19 is 2.4 or something like that. So it's a little bit higher, more highly contagious than influenza, but not crazy like measles. So those are the types of things that you want to have a vaccine for. SARS and MERS were not that highly contagious, so they didn't really talk about vaccines for that.
Is there any indication of, like rapid mutation or like different strains, like with influenza, you're always like throwing a dart?
And I don't think, and most coronaviruses don't mutate like that. The ones that I showed before, the common ones, they stay like that. Whereas the influenza X, or the virus, like you said, every year it changes. So that's why we're always chasing it. We're chasing the vaccine, the strains that go into that. So at this point, I don't think coronavirus is changing like that. Did you have a question?
I'm just curious if you've seen any, or if they've done anything to know if this is gonna be like a recurring, like the flu, where it's every year, it's gonna be like, this is kinda like a cold, or is it gonna be something that once it's done, it's done?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish I could answer it. No. Like MERS has been around, since 2013, so it's still, being transmitted in the community. SARS was here and gone. I would say based upon how this one acts, it's probably going to be something that is just something that becomes another one of those common coronaviruses that we say. It's probably going to increase that list from 4 to 5. Like H1N1, when it came in 2009, it just became the virus that is now circulating every single year in the population. So it comes in, it's novel, it's new, a lot of people get sick. And then after people start to get immunity to it and natural infection, it just becomes something that gets, we call it an endemic. And so it's just in the population circulating like normal. And so if I had to predict, I would say coronavirus 2019 is going to be one of those viruses that just continues to circulate, but it's not going to be as severe. Because like H1N1, it's not as severe as it was back in 2009 because you have a vaccine for it, you have people who have been infected and immunity to it, and so it just kind of falls down in terms of severity. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, that makes it feel like we're all scared for like a lot of, okay, be scared, but if it's gonna keep coming back, then we'll deal with it.
Yeah, but it's new, and like,
Yeah, we'll be okay.
and so like the initial time you get it, like your body's not ready for it, your body can't fight it off, and so that's why it's so hard right now, is that you don't have natural protection against it. And so those people who are critically ill or have underlying conditions are going to be more affected by it. And there may be some individuals who.
So I have type 1 diabetes. I'm curious. It takes me forever to get over like the regular flu.
Yeah.
So you're talking about people with like heart problems, lung problems. Like, should I be a little more scared because I have diabetes for 25 years to like sick?
Well, yeah. I think any chronic underlying condition that you have is going to make you slightly at more risk for these types of infections. But your heart is healthy, your lungs are healthy, and that's really where this virus impacts you. And so I think you might have a slightly higher risk than someone else that doesn't have diabetes, but you might make you a little bit. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Yeah. So
basically, until somebody gets sick in Michigan that's hospitalized and is able to meet those 3 criteria and we test, we don't really know if it's here because everybody's in the 80% mild category.
That's right. Yeah. So that's a good question. There very well could be here right now. Right. Exactly. Yeah. All right. I think that's it. Just really quick household planning. Just think about things. Like I said, there could be social disruption. There could be things shutting down, things like that. And just if you've got loved ones who are at greater risk for serious complications, just be aware of that and understand that this could impact them. If you have people in long-term care facilities and whatnot, just think about that. Choose a room like this. If someone gets sick in your house and you want to contain it, this is what we do normally. Flu or gastrointestinal disease. Kind of isolate them in your household. If they can use a separate bathroom from everybody else, this is not something different for coronavirus. We say this all the time to people. Just start thinking more about washing your hands more often, covering your cough like you did, staying away from people, being more aware of your surroundings, not touching your face. So practice that. Just when it comes, it'll be more of a habit. just learn about operations at your school, like, you know, if your school is thinking about shutting down, if your business is thinking about shutting down, just know how that may impact your lives. Just start thinking more about that. You don't really necessarily have to make a plan right now, but just understand that, you know, we could have some of these things occurring in our local community for a period of time to help stop or control transmission. So I think that's it. So sorry if I took more time than I was supposed to, but
Good stuff. Thank you very much.
yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Very informative and kind of puts things in perspective for you a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do this without glasses since I left them back there. So, Steve, what we're going to do is we're going to honor the people who are our top producing agents of 2019. In keeping with our general policy, we don't talk about volumes or income. We're just going to honor these people and give them certificates for their listing portfolio or for whatever you choose to use them for.
Can I mention one thing?
Of course.
We have the top 5, we have kind of a gold, and then the next 10, we have awards for this year, and we didn't do it by order, it's alphabetical, so. And if you want to come up, then when we do it, we'll shake your hand.
Okay, so we're going to start with, we're going to save the top 5 for last. And, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, no shaking hands on this, that's right. Yeah, that's what we'll do, just like
Or you
so.
can use the hand mic.
Okay, for our silver letter level, and these are in alphabetical order, and the silver level, these would be the 6 to 15 agents. First is Brittany. Brittany Rupp. Second is Greg Brown. Yeah, you can hold your applause until somebody's actually here. Third is Gage Evans. Now, when I say third, those are not in ascending order. These are alphabetical. Picture there.
Are you in the picture?
Am I in the picture? Sure. Just don't touch. Okay. Next is Sean Kiphart. Sean, come on up. And we'll send you a copy of these pictures.
We're gonna take some better ones after.
Okay, good.
Because the podium and.
Okay.
So
Okay, not a good background?
Yeah, I think maybe after the meeting.
Okay, anybody who wants a picture after the meeting, we'll get it set up with our banners and take them that way. Next would be Dan Stegman. Congratulations, Dan. Congratulations. Next, Laura Vanderbus. Next would be Aaron Whiteford. I saw Aaron here somewhere. Congratulations, Aaron. Chuck Weiser. And again, these are just alphabetical, so we're getting down to the W's. Jamison Wurst. Get a picture afterwards. And Gail Wyatt. Jim was at breakfast this morning. Gail's still in Florida.
Good for her.
Yeah, enjoying Florida. Okay, and I'm just going to do Rookie of the Year. We were very proud to have Brittany as our Rookie of the Year. She did a great job this year. Unfortunately, is she gone? Or? Okay, congratulations. Thank you. A virtual handshake. Okay, we're at our we're at our top 5, and the first one of those would be Steve Dykstra. Congratulations, Steve.
Thank you.
Maybe I should wear like rubber gloves. I just disinfected my hands. Jerry and Stephanie Garner, great team that worked for the company. I hope Teresa Hoffman's watching. She had a knee replacement last week, Thursday. We hope you're doing well, Teresa, and congratulations. Next is Sue Timmer. Where's Sue? Sue Maycroft Timmer. And because her name is last in the alphabet, Carrie Voss. Congratulations, Carrie. Thank you.
That's it?
That's all I got.
Hold on, we have one thing.
Okay.
Oh, we did have, oh, 2 things. That's right.
Two things.
No, just one thing. This is Caitlin. She is our new front desk. So she's here to help. She's learning the ZAP system. So she's continuing to learn, but this is her 2nd week here. So please welcome her, and she'll be around to help us out. Yay.
Put a face with a name.
And if you still like me even just a little bit, continue to turn in your listings and your pending.
Yes.
On time.
Okay. Well, absolutely, Steve. I do want to reinforce what she just said. There's a lot of reasons for you not to wait until closing to turn in your packages and when you get paid. Firstly, it becomes a question of broker supervision. If it ever came up, how can a broker supervise a deal that they don't know about, that hasn't been turned in? Secondly, it wreaks havoc with, why are the reasons why you want it in on time?
Well, the biggest
This is just
reason-
really important.
The biggest reason is that since the new system that we have, I'm still monitoring to make sure things are going in the system. So listings, if I don't know that you have a listing, yeah, I could go searching, but please, if you like me a little, don't make me continue to do that. I have to make sure that they're in the ZAP system properly so that it's generating your stuff, like your package, your listing package, your marketing, your videos. On the pending side, I have to manually enter those. So that's why I need them to be turned in so that I can get them in the system. They don't pull from the MLS that way. So
What about the .loop doesn't, when we send that and submit the packages?
that is submitting.
Okay,
That's what I'm
okay,
asking
okay,
for,
that's
but not everybody does that. Yeah, I need that done.
There are a few people in this room that don't do that. That's what I should say. And I'm not looking at anybody in particular. I'm just kind of looking around, and eye contact is not one of the ways that you spread this. Whatever you.
Jen, do you want to say something to everybody? No?
He's gonna be talking in a little bit, and he'll do his thing at
I'll
that
say a
point.
little bit. Hey guys. Doing some training here with the chief, and we're seeing some results with it. We do it every other week. I'm up here doing training, but after Achieve, which will be over in a month, there'll be a listings class, and then there'll be some other classes here that will market and advertise to you guys to have you come in and take a look at the class. They're all about productivity. So if you want more productivity, come into the class. We drive engagement in the class, and we drive you actually making phone calls in the classroom in a safe environment. So if you don't have all the business you want, come in, take an idea away from the class, go and execute it in your business. Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, can I say one more? Caitlin just reminded me of this. Matt Mansfield will be here on Thursday. He will be here all day. At 1 o'clock, he's going to do just a 1-hour meeting of some new cool tech tools that might benefit you if you want to learn about those. I will say, last week Friday, Matt spent about an hour with Jim Lyles working on Gail Wyatt's website. It is phenomenal. He took the ZAP website, added extra pages of the stuff that Gail does, and it looks great. It's not live yet, but it will be soon. So if that's something that you're interested in, you want to help create those things, that's what he's here for. He's not here just to teach you ZAP, the system. He's here to help with all that stuff too.
Also, Jamie came up with a way that we can add your old listings to
Yep.
a page.
Until they start generating, because they won't pull, your old listings won't pull to your website until from here on out they will, but the old ones won't. But we have kind of a workaround to help with that.
So the comment was, it makes me look like a rookie. So if you have deals out there that you want to get in, now's the time to get after that. And I just also want to add that this is kind of if you've got some fire to do some more business, this is the time to take advantage of people like Shannon and people like Matt, because we're not going to get this all the time. He's not going to be here for the next 2 years, every 2 weeks. For the foreseeable future, yeah, but this is not going to continue. We want to get people really up to speed, and that's the idea right now. So please don't drag your feet and say, I'll do this later. You're in a market where we can find a little bit of time to do this, if you want to do more business.
When you say old listings, you're talking about ones that haven't sold yet, right?
No, ones who have sold. So anything that you sold
Credit
from
for your sales.
Yeah.
You get credit for your sales on instead of it not showing on your website.
Well, we don't have to put all of them on there. I would suggest maybe just doing we can pick those things. We don't have to. I mean, we've got people who've been in here for years who have hundreds of sold. We don't need to do that. It's just to put some up there so you look like you have experience. Matt will be here all day on Thursday.
Do we need to set
Typically
appointments?
9:30. It would be best to set
You've got to
appointments with
set an
Matt.
appointment with him. And you are getting time from somebody who knows that system inside and out, and will make a difference in how you appear to the public. People, this is not word of mouth all the time anymore. People are evaluating you by what they see on your website.
And Google reviews.
And Matt can help you with those too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there a phone number to call?
I will send that out again. Text or email works better.
Are we
'cause he's
keeping his schedule, or is he
constantly-
keeping his schedule?
He's keeping it for the most part. I'm helping him as much as I can, but
Okay.
instead of being the go-between, it'd be better just to go through Matt. But I'll send that out.
I lost some time because my front tier went down, and apparently messages I lost stuff that I didn't even know was sent, so that's where I'm struggling right now.
And I've lost stuff that I don't even know I lost.
So we have coming on Thursday.
We have something in common.
All right.
Steve, yep.
I didn't know you lost it, so.
I just want to share something that's really dear to my heart. There are a couple mothers about my age that had really handicapped kids. And that's all they do is stay home. Maybe they'd have some other people over play, or they had to put them into a home. So the two mothers got together and they thought, what can we do? So they went to Founders, and they got all the different byproducts from beer, the barley, the wheat, and they started putting the kids to work. And they got big vats of peanut butter, and they got flour and eggs and everything else, and they started making dog biscuits. And if you're seeing it even in the latest news, anybody that goes into any Fifth Third bank with their dog gets free dog biscuits from the Beer City Dogs. And this is a package right here that I've been handing out to a lot of my clients. I bring them to every one of my listing appointments. Who's the best friend of your client? It's their dog, And so I've been bringing this, and I just tuck it away if they don't have a dog, because I don't know when I go to see them first. But I got a bunch of samples here, I just have to put my business card in there, and you could put your business card in there, but they're just samples. If you would like to order any of these, I buy them in packages of 48. I get 48 of these at a time. And it's a great way too to stop by your client and to say, I got something great I'd like to drop off. I either give them, if they don't have a dog, I give them a free entertainment book, or I give them this. Just another way to get in front of your clients. And it's really cool because I went, it's at a Reformed church on 10 College. And I went down there and, observe these young adults that could never have a normal job, making these dog biscuits And I actually stood in there with them. They were so excited when I bought dog biscuits from them. Now they just have a new dog biscuit that has not been released to the public yet. Okay? And I got the first samples, and I just want to give everybody some of these samples. And this is their story. I can kind of hand out some of these. This is the story about how it was all done. And so, you know, if you buy these dog biscuits and you hand them out, you're telling a story. So you're giving it to someone, and you know, you're giving a dog biscuit to these people's dog in their house. What I do when I do on a listing appointment or buyer appointment, I don't even start talking about real estate. I want to be their friend before we talk about anything. I don't want to tour through their house. I don't want to start opening folders. You know, whether they have kids, I like to hang with their kids, or if they've got a dog. I mean, that trick has worked phenomenal for me. So I just want to hand some of these out. If anybody wants to buy some dog biscuits, I just think it's so cool. I went there yesterday and picked up a bunch of them. Right at 210 College, for 10 College.
North or south?
It's right on the corner of, it's only 10, so there's only. College and Fulton? Yeah, it's right at College and Fulton.
Betty Crow's. For anybody who's old enough to know what that is.
But I've got 48 bags, if anybody wants one. I know Jim.
I have a dog, Steve.
You're gonna get a free one, but I'll give you one with a sticker on it.
Okay.
From Dykstra Property.
Okay, sounds good.
Here you go.
Thank you. Whoops.
Can I say, I have 2 special needs kids, and so I love that there are businesses, and I have 2 kids, 2 adult kids that are founders too, but, I love when businesses are able to do this, because I have a son who can't do a normal job. He has a great heart, but he just can't do that big requirement that they expect, and a lot of companies, even Goodwill has a hard time, you know, giving them that room for processing and remembering and all that kind of stuff, so I love that companies like this.
Do you live in town?
I live in Cedar Springs.
Okay. I mean, if you could ever bring them there, I'm just gonna show you. I hate to take up floor time here, but I am a salesman. This is I just wanna show you here. I can't see this around, but here's, isn't that something? These are some of the guys, girls that are all getting together. They're the ones that are making the dog biscuits. So all the money goes to them and to their organization.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Appreciate it very much. Okay, anybody anything else to add? Going once, going twice? Thanks for coming.